Whoa, how did I do that? It was like impossible. It like fell from my ceiling and I caught it. The magic of editing, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so man, I'll tell you, that awkward moment when you're reading a shonen manga for 1042 chapters, because yeah, I've been reading One Piece since it first got released, of course. And then you finally find out that the main character's ability is not what you thought it was going to be. Now, to be fair, we have yet to actually find out if it's going to be that level of a twist with it, where Oda's going to reveal, by the way, it was not the Gamu Gamu no Mi the entire time, it was something else. But it hasn't been confirmed, to be fair, but with the last chapter, chapter 1042, I'm thinking that's going to be the twist, so let's start brainstorming, okay? If you think Luffy's ability is the Gamu Gamu no Mi, and it's always going to be the Gamu Gamu no Mi, and it's a paramecia, and that's the way it's going to stay, not the video for you. But for everybody else, let's brainstorm. Let's try to figure out what's going on here, okay? So there was one line in the chapter when Kaido was being attacked with an onslaught of Luffy's Snake Man barrages. And he was kind of like, oh, rubber or gum should not be able to bend in this way. He should not be able to change the trajectory like a whim or whatever, right? Now, there's one way you could take that to mean like, well, since it can't bend that way, therefore it must not be rubber. It must be beyond rubber. It must be something else altogether. Or it could have just been like Kaido was impressed with the ability that Luffy was exhibiting with his fruit, and might have been implying that Luffy was awakening, for an example. Like, oh, okay, regular abilities, like, this is going beyond that with the Gamu Gamu no Mi, okay? This has to be something else. He must be getting ready to awaken, or there must be something else that I don't know about. It could still be the Gamu Gamu no Mi, it's just Luffy's awakening to new power, okay? So that's one way to take it. But regardless of what, Kaido said there, or what he was thinking to himself about the nature of Luffy's rubber, hey, this is very serious here, okay? Regardless what Kaido said about that, given the way the chapter ended, with Luffy getting attacked by Kaido, straight on with the CP0 member distracting Luffy or preventing him from attacking, and then Kaido just, boom, bringing down the homicidal drunken rage of his Kanabo down upon Luffy. I really can't see Luffy getting back from this unless there is, like, an evolution, an awakening to his devil fruit. There has to be something else going on here. I just really feel, that's what Oda's going for. Oda's going for this moment in the story, in this battle between two titans, let's be honest here, where we think, oh no, Luffy got attacked, he didn't have a chance to defend himself, he didn't attack because the CP0 agent distracted him, this is it, this is the low point of the fight. This would have been another great point to end Act 3. Can you imagine if Act 3 would have ended there? Oh my god. Act 3, 2-week break, ended. Alright, moving on to Act 4, ladies and gentlemen, where Kaido is the new main character of One Piece. I mean, alright, I could dig it, sure, why not? But it's like, this is the low point. This is the moment in the wrestling match, and I don't even watch wrestling, but this is the moment in the wrestling match where, the hero is down, and then he gets back up, and then boom, and then he beats the main villain, and it's all awesome. Okay, great, okay. I think that's what Oda's going for here. I could be wrong, but next time it's going to be a big reveal. Gear 5th, call it Awakening, call it the Awakening that is Gear 5th, whatever, alright? So let's go into some theories here. First up is the big one. It's the mythical zone theory. I mentioned it in the review, but that was something that has been talked about. I know a few other YouTubers have made videos about it. The idea that Luffy does not have a paramecia at all. It's actually a mythical zone, a mythological creature that just happens to exhibit the capacities for rubber-based abilities, I guess, and that's like a side effect, but the main event is the fact he has like a mythical zone transformation. And this can also tie back to just the appearance of Luffy's Gear 4th, specifically his bound man, with the position that he takes, with everything like that, his fist and his palm out like this. It's very similar to a Japanese Nyo statue, the giant guardian statue deities that are like on either side of Buddhist temples. You ever see Gantz? They're like those. Also, Hyogoro mentioned in the festival hall, it looked very similar to a Myo. Not a Neo, but a Myo, which is like a wisdom king. Also one of the epithets for Kaido, so there's a connection back to there, okay? So, look, that would be really cool if Luffy is a mythical zone. I just feel like unless the explanation and the writing for this is handled impeccably, then it's gonna cause more problems than how awesome it is. That's just my opinion. And it could be a thing. Like, we know Oda is a great writer, so it's like, oh, well, he's actually a mythical zone. And Oda goes on, like, to explain, like, this is all the foreshadowing I had for this way back since chapter 1. Hey, man, if Oda can do it, if he's up to the task, if this was, like, foreshadowed plenty of times, and if it's set up and he can go back and explain everything, I was like, how come, okay, if he's a mythical zone, how come Luffy doesn't have, like, the zone transformations, like the hybrid form and the full form? And Oda could be like, well, he actually does. It's just these were his forms the whole time. It's like, whoa. It's like it was his gears the whole time. It's like, whoa. Well, how come most zones can go into those forms immediately and it took Luffy years of training? Well, it's this explanation. I'm just saying the explanations would have to be very, very, very well done for it to make sense, okay? It's an awesome idea, though. So aside from Mythical Zone, because I feel like that's been talked about with other YouTubers and stuff, let's look at some other possibilities here. So here's something that I think that makes sense greatly, okay? And this actually goes back to a video that I made about what I think is the weirdest devil fruit, and I would recommend to go watch that because it addresses something, not just that it's a weird fruit, but like how all fruits have this weird concept of concepts. All right, let me back up here, okay? The weirdest fruit in that video, I said, was Osaru's Wash fruit, all right? Osaru, the Vice Admiral, okay? She has the ability of the Wash fruit, allowing her to take people and hang them up out to dry like clothing, and it, like, washes a little bit of the evil out of their heart. Like, that was the basis for Osaru's ability, okay? Now, there's a lot of wacky devil fruit powers, so you're probably wondering, like, why did I pick that one specifically? Yeah, sure, it's weird, Matt, but there's a lot of other weird fruits out there. Have you seen Brook lately? You know, the being that transcends literal life and death, channeling the powers of an underrealm into the powers of a skeleton? Like, okay, yeah, granted. But the crazy thing, and the reason I picked that as the weirdest fruit, is that her ability had the concept of laundry. It was the human concept of laundry. Laundry does not exist naturally in nature. That has to be something that humans created, and that concept embodies a devil fruit. It's not a water fruit. It's not a soap fruit. It's a laundry fruit. The concept of laundry embodied in a superpower, okay? So, if we're going with that logic, and there's a lot of other devil fruits I could rattle off that have a similar idea, like, for example, Aokiji's. Aokiji's is not the ice fruit, it's the cold fruit. It's the concept of cold in a devil fruit power, and all the other things that connects to that Aokiji uses, okay? And there's a bunch of other examples. So, let's just say Luffy's ability, I don't know what it would actually be called, and this was probably the devil fruit that the Goro say they changed the name of, okay? I'm thinking, at this point, it was probably Joy Boy's fruit. Same reason they have, most likely, Joy Boy's Straw Hat locked away in the dungeons of Marijois. They probably want to eliminate anything that connects back to Joy Boy and the origin of the Clan of D and the Void Century, everything, right? Okay? So, if that was the case, they would really have a vested interest in the fruit that Joy Boy had, all right? It might be the first devil fruit, or it might be one of the first, who knows? This would also tie back into why they punished Who's Who so severely for losing it to Shanks, right? So, you know, we know about Who's Who's backstory, and then we find out that the Gorosei changed the name of a devil fruit for some reason, and then we cut back to Zunisha. You know, Zunisha used to be a Nakama of Joy Boy, so I think that's all connecting the dots right there. So, regardless of what it's called, though, what if the nature or the concept that Luffy's fruit embodies is not rubber, but of the idea of countering an enemy? The idea of, there was a comment I saw by a guy named Logan, and he basically said Luffy's fruit should be called the bounce fruit, because Luffy bounces back all the damage, okay? Now, Logan, that's a good idea, but we have one problem here. The bounce fruit is already in the possession of Nami, all right? So let's just take that off the table right now, okay? We can't have two bounce fruits, okay? But the overall idea there, the idea that Luffy's fruit is not rubber in the strictest sense of, like, natural rubber, you know, that's, like, made up of tires and those little bouncy things you get at the dollar store, like little bouncy super balls or whatever. No, the idea is it's a fruit that literally exists to counter all these other fruits. It's like the devil fruit that can beat, theoretically, any other devil fruit with their proper amount of training. It's not just like you eat the Gamu Gamu no Mi or you eat this fruit and all of a sudden you like, I can defeat anybody, because obviously Luffy has been defeated before in combat, but this is crazy, because this might be Oda trying to, like, explain away, like, okay, you know how, like, Luffy's the main character, so he kind of always has to win, and you could say that's like, well, that's because he's got plot armor, because he's, like, the main character of his story. That'd be so weird if Oda was like, no, I'm literally gonna take the concept of him being a main character with his main character powers, and I'm gonna explain it in the story with his devil fruit. It has the concept to counter anything, okay? Sort of like how in Toriko, where near the end they introduced the idea of food luck as like an actual power that exists, that could be stolen and absorbed by other characters, and it's just like food luck was the idea of it being like, you know, like plot convenience, kind of, sort of, like as an actual mechanism in the story itself, kind of meta. Yeah, it's kind of like that, all right? So, I mean, think of all the major opponents Luffy has defeated before in the past, you know, Crocodile, Eneru, Lucci. He never really technically defeated Magellan, but who knows? If the battle continued, he might have. Doflamingo, though. All these characters that were really, really powerful. Luffy had to train his butt off, okay? It wasn't as simple as just eating the fruit and he instantly knew how to defeat his opponents. But what if it's the devil fruit that Luffy consumed with enough training has the potential to defeat any other devil fruit, regardless of strengths or weaknesses or classification, whether it's a Logia, Paramecia, Zone, Mythical Zone, Ancient Zone, does not matter. Luffy can defeat any of them with his tenacity, okay? And if that was the true nature of his fruit, and if that was the nature of the fruit that Joy Boy consumed, if it was the same fruit, which would also kind of go along with Joy Boy's kind of, you know, outlook on the world, you know, if he was opposing the world government to be like, you know, there's nothing that can't be defeated or can't be triumphed over, right? And so that's when Joy Boy decided to go up against the world government, and, well, in that case, he did end up losing, but he lost in the same way that, like, Luffy lost initially to Magellan, or if, like, Luffy went up against Whitebeard in his prime. Obviously, Luffy would lose that fight. Joy Boy lost that fight, okay? And we understand Joy Boy was probably a pretty strong customer. He was pretty strong, and yet he still lost, all right? Could have been for any number of reasons. We don't know the circumstances of how he lost, okay? We don't even know if it was the circumstances of, like, you know, Joy Boy was going up against, like, you know, Eam way back in the Void Century, and they were brawling it out, and then Eam just ended up beating Joy Boy. You know, it might not have been that cut and dry. In fact, it most likely probably wasn't, okay? So that's one way to look at it. To go even one step further, though, with it being like the perfect counter to most devil fruits, I started to think of it, now I'm going into Black Clover territory, where I'm starting to think, like, what if it's like the anti-devil fruit? You know, like Asta's anti-magic, where it's like, okay, everybody in this world has magic, I have anti-magic, so I win. Once again, Asta doesn't automatically win every single fight, but anti-magic is extremely useful, and it's a power that really messes up a lot of other characters. Kinda similar to Luffy in that respect, where a lot of people go up to him and they think, oh, he's just got the Paramecia gum fruit, who cares? And then boom, Luffy kicks their asses. Yes, because of his training, but because maybe the nature of the devil fruit is maybe a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more special than you initially thought of, okay? Maybe another way of looking at it, instead of rather like anti-magic, look at it like maybe, like, okay, Eraserhead's erasure quirk from My Hero Academia. Aizawa has a quirk that still functions as a quirk. It still has all the same rules as every other quirk, except his quirk is to erase other people's quirks. So maybe that's the thing, where it's like a devil fruit that still abides by all the same rules as every other devil fruit. You know, we've seen Luffy still has the same devil fruit weaknesses as everybody else. So it's still a devil fruit. It's still under the classification of a devil fruit. Would still be a Paramecia, or maybe a special Paramecia. But it just has the capacity to go up against every other devil fruit and potentially defeat them. Like, the Gamu Gamu no Mi is a fruit that technically has no natural weaknesses for that reason. I also thought of the idea, well, I brought it up in the review as well, what if there actually is, like, a gum gum fruit? Like, let's say this isn't that, like Luffy ate something else. There might be a normal Gamu Gamu no Mi somewhere out there in the world. Maybe somebody has the power, maybe somebody doesn't. It's still in fruit form, but it's not even close to being as strong as Luffy. Like, it literally just gives them the ability to, like, stretch their limbs out a little bit, but it's not even close to what Luffy can do with his power, okay? Overall, I would like Luffy's ability simply to remain a paramecia, special paramecia. I would rather it not be a mythical zone. I thought about Logia because rubber is something that naturally occurs in nature, just like ice and snow and magma and fire and mud and all that kind of jazz, sand and smoke and everything. So you could have one like that. Just like how Aokiji, I mean, he can turn himself into ice, which is a solid object, you know, just because most Logia are like, you know, things that are intangible like fire or smoke, does not mean that you can't have a Logia that's more solid. Like look at, you know, Caribou's Numa Numa no Mi, Aokiji's Hia Hia no Mi. So it could be something like that all the whole time. It's just it's a special Logia. You know, since there's a special paramecia category, it's not a far stretch to assume there's a special zone category, a special Logia category. Mythical zone is already kind of the special zone category, but you know what I mean, right? Oh, man. So if it isn't any of that stuff, I still think that even if it is just the regular rubber fruit, and Luffy, you know, doesn't have anything, there's nothing really super special about it beyond that, other than the fact that the Gorosei might want it because it used to be Joy Boy's ability. Because think about it, like people thought for a while that Roger had that fruit, and this was way back in the earlier days of One Piece before we really got to see what Roger was all about. And I made a video years ago talking about how Luffy just doesn't have, you know, like Roger did not have the Gumu Gumu no Mi the same as Luffy does, right? But it's not exactly a far cry to say that like Joy Boy might have had it, because everything about Joy Boy is covered up or destroyed over the centuries by the world government, right? The idea, like, if Roger had the Gumu Gumu no Mi and then he died and the Luffy had it, that wouldn't make any sense, because it's like Whitebeard met him and then Whitebeard eventually met Luffy, and like Roger lived fairly recently compared relative to Joy Boy, like 900 years ago, right? So if Luffy had the same power as Roger, a lot of people would know about it and would mention it to Luffy, right? But so that doesn't make any sense. But going back further to Joy Boy does. But yeah, Joy Boy might have had the similar abilities that Luffy has. He might have had Gear 2nd, 3rd, 4th, Snake Man, Bound Man. He might have called them different things, but they might have been similar kind of abilities, right? And they were just jotted down throughout the centuries by different generations of the Gorosei. Maybe Eam, if Eam really is immortal, maybe Eam remembers it. And so that's why maybe the order, actually that makes a lot more sense now. The reason why they punished Who's Who so severely, maybe it wasn't an order by the Gorosei, it was a direct order by Eam. So Eam ordered that devil fruit to be captured and brought to Marijois, and they sent Who's Who CP9 at the time to bring it in. He failed, and so he didn't just fail the world government. He didn't just fail an order from the Gorosei, it would have been bad enough. He failed a direct order from Eam, and that's why his punishment was so severe. Like, let me tell you something, okay? When Eam-sama, the ruler of the entire world, pretty much, gives you a direct order, you better carry it out to the letter. When he orders a Big Mac, a medium fry, and a medium orange high C drink from McDonald's with no onions on that Big Mac, you better get back exactly what he ordered, okay? Or you're going to be severely punished in the process, right? So that's where I'm at right now. That's where my headspace is on this. To recap, Luffy, I think, still does have a paramecia. It's probably not called the Gumu Gumu no Mi. What it actually is might be some kind of ability that's enemy to most devil fruits, like how the Will of D are the enemies to God. Kind of goes hand in hand with Joy Boy as well there. And he's going to awaken to these powers, you know, because even if it's not the Gumu Gumu no Mi, Luffy still had this fruit for 12 years at this point. He's trained with it quite a bit, so he's going to reach the next level of it coming up here in the battle with Kaido. So we'll see where that goes and see if Luffy truly does bounce back. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, so with that being said, now let's go to Frog Facts. Cue the intro.
Tekking.
Oh yeah, this is a fun one. Today, we're talking about the Vietnamese mossy frog, or the bug-eyed frog, or just the moss frog for short. Okay, so at first glance, this frog looks pretty sickly. You know, it looks like there is like a type of moss or something like growing on his body, and it's like siphoning off his power, like we're going parasect with this or something. No, that's not actual moss. That's its skin, okay? And these things live in China, Vietnam, obviously, a little bit in Laos. It's debatable whether they're in Laos, but they might be, you know, in that general region of the world. And it's a very effective camouflage, because if you look at these things, like here, can you see the frog? I mean, you probably can, but like if you're a snake or something, you probably won't, right? It's actually a very effective camouflage growing up in this rainforest, kind of a very tropical kind of environment, that they decided, okay, we could make ourselves look like trees, we can make ourselves look like leaves, but no, evolution decided to take this guy and was like, you know what? We're just going to have you grow these growths all over your body that like neon green that resemble moss, and it's perfect. And it was even stated that when they're scared or when they're like threatened, they just curl up into a ball and they just don't move and play dead. So that's actually kind of funny in of its own right. And they also have these giant eyeballs, right? So their vision is pretty impeccable. So yeah, there's another picture here. I initially thought when I first looked at this that these were fossils of the frog. Like these fossils were from like millions of years ago and they were preserved. And no, these are actual frogs that are still alive. It's just that their silhouettes against the backdrop resemble like a flat two-dimensional thing, okay, because they blend in so well. So yeah, that's the moss frog. Not really much more on that one. I just wanted to bring it up because it's just interesting in like certain directions that evolution will take every once in a while to like protect an animal, okay? And this is the way that this one went. Okay, so thanks for watching, everybody. Tekking and Barry signing out. What are you called?